Everybody. So we are here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery. This one is called C.V. Pacem Bellum. So it's a little bit of Latin there. And my friend Tom is here to talk about it.
Howdy.
Yeah. And so this one, last week we had what I would say was a really fun episode. Was a really well-written, fun episode. This one I think is a little more sort of nuts and bolts. There's a lot packed into this. It's less like flashy fun. But I really enjoyed it, and it's I think a really good sort of lead up to our mid-season finale next week.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I would have appreciated it better though if they had gone back to the convention of labeling episodes that are two parts, part one and part two. Now I get that this is like a whole thing, but I felt a little bit disoriented throughout, and I think it was because I didn't understand the arc of the episode and I had to watch it a couple of times to really get my finger on exactly what all was happening. Exactly what all was happening. So
yeah, I actually agree with you there. It was a little confusing at times about what was going on, and I had to sort of read a little bit some of the summaries and some of the other reviews, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that was going on there. C.V. Pacem Bellum means if you want peace, prepare for war.
Right.
So that's an interesting quote. And so we have, like I said, we have kind of a lot going on. It's sort of jumping all over the place, but it starts out with this ship. They're in this battle, and this ship gets lost. It gets taken out by the Klingons
the Gagarin, right?
Gagarin, yeah. And the main sort of problem is that the Klingons have this cloaking ability for all of their ships. And so that's sort of the problem they're trying to solve, is how do we defeat the Klingons when they have this ability to be invisible? And so that sort of starts them on this trek, I guess. They end up on this planet trying to find this, I guess, energy that will help them to be able to detect these cloaked ships. And you have Burnham and Ash and Saru that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this planet, all of this, it's like a living planet. And I thought a little bit about Genesis a little bit in this, how that in the movies that was like the whole planet was like a sort of a living planet. It kind of reminded me of that.
Well, the thing with Genesis, it didn't have any sentience, right? You couldn't talk to it, but it did grow incredibly fast. So it did seem to have a sense of like, oh, this thing almost has a mind of its own. But this place literally does have a mind of its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it vibrates, this planet, and it's something that is very, very hard for Saru to deal with. He can't handle the noise.
He's a dog on the planet of the dog whistles. Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. And so it's really starting to get at him, and they're called the Pava, I think.
Parva or I can't remember.
Yeah. And so he's really struggling, and there's an interesting thing where they talk about that the Klingons are not seeking peace. The Klingons are seeking superiority. That's their main goal, and so that makes them a particularly hard enemy, I guess, to defeat. Who ends up kind of contacting the Pava, and it's basically kind of overtakes him. And I don't know, what did you think about all of this with Saru and this this energy and sort of his arc in this episode.
Well, what I appreciated about this is that there were a lot of Star Trek tropes being employed here. Of an entity that's like not really embodied, that goes back to the original series, several episodes of the original series. I sort of know was being signaled by that, but also Saru being sort of creepy after he's had his experience making contact with them. That was really familiar. If you want to do your homework on that, check out This Side of Paradise. Where they go to this, it's an episode where they go to this planet where there's a colony that's about to be exposed to deadly radiation, or that's being exposed to deadly radiation, and they need to be evacuated. When they get there, they find that everybody's happy and everything's fine. And radiation? What? We don't need to worry about that. These spores protect us, and the spores make you kind of happy and goofy and spacey. And Spock gets a hit of it, right? And that's when things really hit the fan. And Spock suddenly becomes happy, spacey, goofy, hippie Spock. Even falls in love, right? And so I've been trained by Star Trek to not trust someone who comes back saying, "Oh, everything is so groovy." Right. Star Trek has sort of set us up to distrust that. And actually, I think they're playing with that here, both with Stamets to some extent, and with and in this episode with Saru.
Yeah, I really liked I wrote down some dialogue they had between him and Burnham. Burnham says, "Is this what harmony and balance looks like?" Which I thought was interesting. And he says, and Saru says, "You've taken everything from me. You won't stop taking." So I thought that was interesting. Sort of this resentment that he has for Burnham, and that she in his eyes, she's a taker of peace and a taker of, and then Burnham says, "I would give anything for a millisecond of peace, but until the war is done, we can't have it." And trying to kind of cling on to this feeling he has, where it's sort of an idealism versus realism kind of thing, which is a very Trek sort of thing. And yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, no, that's true. You're bringing up a good point. You kind of got me pondering. Okay, so what is Burnham's nature? Well, the thing is, Burnham didn't understand herself in the battle of the binary stars. She didn't understand what she was capable of, and she didn't understand what her motivations for things actually were. She's even asked, what are you doing this because of logic or because of revenge? And she says, "I don't know." She really doesn't know. She doesn't know herself, and she's not paying attention to the little things. And so, unfortunately, sorry, Saru, but imperfection is going to doom harmony. The small imperfections magnified across a whole network are disasters.
Well, and she says, "We seek harmony, but we face a threat that doesn't share that goal." So yeah, it's sort of this realist person who's like seen the other side of things, and she knows, that this is what we have to do, but she wants harmony, she wants things, but she has to be a realist versus the idealist who is hopeful to not have those painful experiences. So it's an interesting thing, and it's also compounded by, I think, an interesting subplot or thread of this episode, where you have sort of the realization, or Burnham, the realization that like when the war is over, she has to go back to prison.
Right.
And so there's this interesting pull on her, I think.
Right. Yeah. So she's learned from hard experience, right? That if you don't move towards harmony with intention, all your efforts will be doomed to fail. Because I think she was sort of, as second of command under Captain Georgiou, I think she felt like it was all in someone else's hands. Or with Sarek, it was all in his hands. And now she's realizing she's beginning to realize that she has to be an active agent to to pursue peace, to pursue harmony, that it isn't just going to happen by itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that she was with Giorgio, like she was actively trying to to prevent she was sort of trying to be sort of an activist, like be the first one to strike, and yeah, that obviously didn't work very well, but so now it's an interesting sort of perspective of well, you got to kind of finish it off, but here she's got this two sides of her, because when it does finish, when it's over, she has to leave Discovery. So I don't know, it's an interesting duality that they have going on with her character, I think.
Another thing going here, another dynamic here in play is instinct versus intention.
Mm.
Reptilian brain versus front brain.
Mm.
Because Saru, he sort of represents that aspect of instinct, because he's instinctively aware of threats, instinctively aware of danger, right? And it's being instinctive that got Michael in this mess in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That just following her instincts did not pay off so
right.
well.
That's a good way to describe it. That's right. So it's also sort of interesting. What did you think of the scene between Ash and Burnham? They have their kiss, and did you think it was a little fan servicey? The needs of the many are worth fighting for.
A little, but I think that in a weird way that that the use of that line and the way they used it sort of exemplifies what this Star Trek show and what all future Star Trek should try to do. It should try to it should acknowledge what came before, but elaborate. It should be deepening it, and not just discarding it or pretending it didn't happen, and not just. And I'm not talking about canon here. I'm talking about just the ideas of Star Trek, the philosophies in Star Trek. Yeah, and I think they're doing that here pretty effectively.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. So we get a couple other storylines in here going while they're on the planet. We have Cornwell. We finally get an update on her, and so there's this Klingon. I forget her name. That is trying to convince Cornwell that she wants to defect. Buy that for a second?
No, not really, but she's just so full of half truths that I didn't know which way was up with her. Frankly, at the end, maybe this is part of the problem for me, is that with Laurel, I felt like
Laurel, that's her
I
name.
had no idea which way was up with her. That sort of goes with the Alice in Wonderland motif that's been addressed earlier. Yeah, sometimes up is down, right? Laurel goes out of her way to make up down. And yeah, I just don't know what to make of any of that. I don't know if this is where I was confused. So Laurel drags Cornwell to a room where apparently they stack dead bodies on the Klingon ship. Instead of a morgue, they just have a body pile somewhere. Which, gross, but okay, that's pretty Klingon, I guess. But is she dead, or is she just out? Because Laurel probably has some interest in keeping her alive, but off of Cole's radar, right? So that would make a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. That's true. That's a good point. I mean, she claims that she wants to end all of the Klingons, and yeah, you're right. So Cornwell's left for dead, and but yeah, I can't imagine that she really is dead. I don't know. That seems like would be a weird way.
I hope not.
That would be a really weird way to end that character.
Yeah, and actually, the more I think about it, the more I doubt it. Especially the way they were talking about her in After Trek, there wasn't any sense of well, that was a good run,
Yeah.
So yeah, they sort of show their hand in After Trek to some extent, but.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which, by the way, while we're on the subject of Cornwell, I ran across a weird fan theory the other day. So, the episode Lethe? There is a character on an original series episode named Lethe. And she's, in that episode, the setting is a a penitentiary. It's a prison. It's a prison, and one of the inmates has been reformed and is now actually one of the counselors there, and she shares a lot of physical characteristics with Admiral Cornwell. And her name, she's introduced as Lethe. And there's a fan theory that, well, she kind of had her memory wiped, and she, because that's what the device did in the episode, is it wipes people's memories, painful memories. And so the theory goes that Lethe in that episode is Admiral Cornwell. So, okay, I don't know. I guess it's one of the things like it might well be, but I don't know, sort of a stealth TOS character in the episode, which I think would be kind of cool. But
yeah, that would be interesting. That would be really interesting. So yeah, so that was kind of that part of the story. So the Klingons are up to no good, and then the other storyline that you had going was you have Stamets, who the tardigrade is starting to get to him, and at one point he refers to Tilly as the captain, and then he gets very kind of angry with her and upset, and she tells him that he needs to report to the doctor, but being the doctor is his partner, he doesn't want to do that because it'll put him in this position of this sort of no-win position.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, that was interesting. So we see groovy Stamets get turned into worried Stamets. So I guess we were right to some extent to distrust groovy Stamets, but not for the reasons that we might have thought. I laugh now when I look back at that episode with the mirror and that odd moment where like he turns around, but the mirror image is staring back. And all the theories of it's the mirror universe and going off. Now that maybe it'll prove that eventually that there was some merit to that, but now right now it looks kind of silly. So, but yeah, with that, I thought that was interesting. I like that the relationship with the doctor is serving a purpose in the story, and it's not just we have an openly gay couple on the show, which okay, fine, but it's not they're not just checking a box for correctness. That's serving the story.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, are there usually like couples like this in Star Trek, like in this way that they've had in this season?
Oh, that's a good question. Not in a way that where like there's this much direct conflict. Like B'Elanna Torres and Tom Paris had a relationship and even got married in Voyager. That's the only other like where they're really actually a couple, not just will they, won't they. There was a lot of will they, won't they in Next Gen. Oh wait, no, there was another relationship in Deep Space Nine. But yeah, there was no. Well, yeah, you know what? I would, if I had the same encyclopedic knowledge of Deep Space Nine that I have of some of the others, I might be able to tell you which episode and what. But yeah, they have. This isn't totally new ground.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. I kind of like the fact that they have made the gay character like a flawed character who makes mistakes, and I think that that's good. Like you don't want to have. Sometimes it's tempting, I think, to make somebody that maybe is a minority character or something like that to make them a paragon of virtue, and so I think it's interesting what they've done with Stamets' character, and I really don't know exactly what's going to happen. I feel like there's a lot of interesting things they could do with it. So I'm really curious to see what happens in the next episode and even continuing on to the rest of the season. Exactly. I could see him going I could see him it being affecting him and not in, I don't think he'd go evil, but like it's sort of a bad side of him coming out. I could see him I know I could just see a lot of different things kind of happening in this next episode with him.
Yeah, I like that they really seem to be going out of their way to test these characters and push them to their limits, and
Yeah.
it's good to see.
Yes. There's like this transmitter that's part of the planet itself. And I thought that the whole sort of the design of the planet was pretty cool. And I think just the production values once again are just so strong in this show, and it just looks cinematic in a way that is very impressive, I think. And this just felt very immersive, and you really got the feeling of this I don't know, this planet. I thought it looked really cool, and I thought it was cool the way this transmitter, like it was like part tree and part like I don't know, part electric. If that
Yeah,
makes
this
sense.
is easily visually the coolest planet Star Trek has ever done. Like where they go land, because I mean, with TOS and even a lot of next gen and DS9, there was a lot of like, oh well, we're clearly in a studio, and here's some stuff we got from the Greens department, and sure, it's alien, go with it. No, this really felt alien, and they used a real location. It felt, yeah, it was very convincing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Burnham tries to set up her like transmitter there to try to contact the Discovery to try to get help, but then there's that's when Saru comes back, and I really liked. He said, "We are born afraid, us Kelpians. My whole life, I have never known a moment without fear," and I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because he hasn't seemed like a really fearful character up to this point to me.
Right. Yeah. I think if you live in that feeling at all times, you have to function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think because he says that the Pava took away his fear, and that was just like an incredible experience for him. And that he talks about the freedom that he feels, and so it may be the kind of thing that you don't sort of realize what's been wrong until you're free from it,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of used to it, and then it almost becomes sort of intoxicating, this new sort of feeling that you have.
Yeah. I can identify with that. Like if
Mhm.
you've got pain that's been persistent and then it suddenly goes away, or I had my ears cleaned out once, and
Mhm.
suddenly I was hearing the full range, and it, um, yeah, I can identify with that feeling, but like oh, there's something oddly kind of simultaneously humorous and heartbreaking about his reaction to coming out of that, and his reaction to Burnham, like, you were a monster. Like I couldn't help but laugh a little bit, is
Yeah.
like his bitterness towards her, but at the same time, like that, like, well, okay, get it, buddy. That would suck.
Yeah, it was a very relatable moment because I don't know, you just think that uh, when when you're used to a certain, I don't know, a certain type of control or a certain type of uh, behavior, and then you get to experience something new or the sort of the other side, it can be a very exhilarating thing. And so I can imagine how he would feel, especially when he's basically kind of under a, I mean, I got the feeling that like the way that he would breathe it in and everything, that it was also there's some kind of chemical control that this planet is having over him too. So
Ooh, that's an interesting thought.
seemed like
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, no, that's a very interesting thought, and we may not be wrong yet about the planet being sinister,
Hmm.
um, or having some sort of weird sideways intent, because
Hmm.
it's not over. The story is not finished.
Yeah. Another scene where Laurel in the Klingons, she tries to align with Cole, I think
Uh
it
huh.
is,
Uh huh.
and but he detects that she's lying, that she's not being real with him, and so there's sort of a scene there, and
For me, that didn't quite play the way they meant it they intended. I think I was quite confused by, oh, he's painting her face. She's in, right? I think
Yeah.
he was thinking the same thing. But then he says, "Okay, you liar, go away. You know, we're gonna have our way with you." And I was like, "Wait, what? Like, so why did you just paint her face? Like, you know what I mean? It felt like um, giving someone the Medal of Honor and then giving him a dishonorable discharge immediately. Like, it just made no sense." But in this, I guess you could see it from the point of view of like, oh, he was marking her, you know, or something like, like it was supposed to be humiliating.
Mm. Yeah, I
Establish dominance by painting your enemy with your colors and then dismissing them, or I don't know.
maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it could be something like that. Some kind of sort of almost something to shame her a little bit, like a scar kind of a thing.
Uh,
Kind of a feel. I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with her with Cornwell if Cornwell, uh, you know, was is really dead, I guess, and what happens with this cloaking device if they're able to really use the sonar to the Pava as sort of Pavo as sonar. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens.
yeah, the
But
way it's kind of looking is it's sort of right now it sort of resembles two original series episodes where very powerful alien forces interfere with Klingon Federation conflicts and
mm,
and cause peace to happen for some reason. Like it's a
mm,
very ham-fisted like, uh, why are you fighting us? You guys shouldn't be fighting each other in the first place. You know, what's wrong with you? And then the moral of the story is, oh, of course we shouldn't fight, right? Where you kind of have this alien, all-powerful alien who steps in as a parental figure and stops the fighting. It's shaping up to remind us of that, but knowing Discovery, they're going to take it sideways. They're going to take that and do something. It's not going to be that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. That's basically what the IGN review. They gave it an 8.5. They liked this episode pretty good, and they said that CV Pacem Parabellum is a very nice mix of old and new Star Trek styles, taking the Klingon War arc and all the attendant drama of that situation and grafting on to it a planet-based story that is about as TOS Trek as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
It all managed to set up next week's mid-season finale as well, though the episode does suffer from some confusing Klingon threads that hopefully will be cleared up soon. So basically the same with, I think, as we feel.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one confused because I felt dumb. But
no, you definitely weren't. And our grumpy friend over at Forbes was less grumpy than maybe some of them. He says jury's still out on this episode, according to him. Which clearly
that's probably the best you could expect from him.
Yeah.
I love you from him. Yeah.
He says, I liked the overwhelming power associated with the cloaking device, as it really would be this much of a game changer. I loved the character development of Saru, and I think the ethical questions being raised are interesting, although I'd like to see them addressed more directly. But perhaps that's me wanting a throwback to the bygone eras of Picard and Sisko, and a show that demonstrates rather than alludes to these issues. So he says, for what it is, the 8th episode of Star Trek Discovery sets up an incredible battle very well. The next one will be for all the marbles. So there you go. So yeah, I'm excited. Are you excited for the finale?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Look, and now that I sort of see what they've been setting up here and what they're trying to remind us of, I'm going, oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do with this?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how they take all of these pieces and gives. I'm sure it'll end on some degree of a cliffhanger, but hopefully we get some answers also. So I'm looking forward to it. And I don't know. Do you know when it comes back? Is it like, I assume?
I had it. I have it in my head that it's something like February or March or something, but I don't know.
So that will be fun. All right. Well, great. Yeah. I mean, I'd give this one like. I think I agree with IGN. I give this one like an 8.5. It kind of depends a little bit on how it all wraps up.
Yeah.
But as a first half, I really enjoyed it. I thought that I think it's Doug Jones, I think is his name, with the shrew. I thought he
Uh-huh.
did an excellent job in those scenes. I just like that they're finally acknowledging the fact that Burnham has to go back to prison. There's just that sort of a weird duality of war and almost not wanting the war to end. Like, how can she keep herself from having that feeling? It's kind of interesting, and I kind of like that they acknowledge that in this episode.
Well,
So
I think that shows that there is something really beautiful and noble about her spirit, in the sense that she's not in it for some prize, right? She doesn't have a heaven waiting for her on the other side of this. All she wants is peace. She wants peace of mind. She wants to be able to sleep at night. And if she can end this war, I think her hope is that that's what she'll get.
mhm.
Not a lake, not a house by Lake Shasta, but just being able to sleep at night. She'll take that.
But there's got to be a little side of her that also doesn't want it to end, because then she has to go back to prison.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's what makes it all so cool.
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
complicated.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, sorry. Well, we'll look forward to talking next week. And so, where can people find you?
My main Twitter feed is at Elmano Robato, and if you want to look in on my poetry collection about Disneyland in progress, I've been posting photos of Disneyland and samples of my poems on at Happy Place Poems. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have links for all that in the description section. You can check it out. And you can find me at Smiling LDS Girl on social media, and at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and YouTube. And yeah, we're going to have this upcoming Saturday, we'll have our latest blockbuster bracket tournament podcast, which I'm really excited about. And we're going to be taking on 90s movies, and so that should be really fun. So there's lots of fun stuff going on. Also, I will be seeing Murder on the Orient Express on Thursday, I think, and so look forward to that. So thank you for joining me, and
Pleasure.
we will talk next week.
Thanks, Rachel.